Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
You're listening to Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. I'm your host, Rob Port. If I sound distracted, it's because I've been busy covering this story all morning. I'm joined by my co-host, Chad Oban.
He's right of center, I'm left of center, both sides of the political spectrum.
I think it's cathartic. I think it's a necessary and proper debate. I'm glad we're having it.
And honestly, we have to do better.
Okay, I don't know why I'm getting blamed for this, right? Welcome to Plain Talk, where we got a lot of things to write about, including some news that kind of broke right before we recorded the show. Now, if you remember at the tail end of the last legislative session, as the property tax plan backed by just about everybody in the legislature, also backed by Governor Armstrong, as it was passing, Representative Scott Lauser, who did vote for that plan, rose and said that he was going to announce another ballot measure or pursue another ballot measure to, I guess, replace or complement that plan. He has now opted not to do that after doing some polling. And so maybe that's our first question for our guest, Governor Kelly Armstrong. Is that good news to you that we're not going to see, I guess, a ballot measure, at least not from Representative Lauser?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think so. I think we should give an opportunity to let this property tax plan work. I think we should get an opportunity to come back and increase the value next year for primary or next session for primary residences. But I also think it shows the reality of, sometimes the difference between the legislative session and the general public. You got a lot of different interest groups that all want tax relief, and I don't blame them, right? Businesses, ag properties, all of that. But turns out the voters live in houses. I mean, voters live in houses or they rent apartments. There's only two places you live in North Dakota. You either rent or you own. And this is, and I give Scott a lot of credit because he wasn't trying to put a poll out there that told him what he wanted to hear. The poll was like, would you take less property tax on your residential property if you diffused it out? And my guess is the numbers didn't come back as strong as he wanted. And that's before you start, talking about if you do it. My problem with broad-based tax relief with the legacy fund earnings as a whole is there's no way to ensure that it only goes to North Dakota residents. That doesn't mean you can't do ag property tax relief in a different way. It doesn't mean you can't do business property tax in a different way. But when you're utilizing the legacy fund earnings, I think it should go to North Dakota citizens. And I can tell you from campaigning for a year, Rob, people wanted relief on their house. That's what they wanted. I support tax relief. I think everybody who considers themselves a Republican and a conservative supports lower taxes. But where the fight was on primary residences. And I think the legislature did a great job of really getting in the door in that in a meaningful way.
So, Kelly, you were the subject of a little conversation this weekend at the North Dakota GOP headquarters. I want to start with property taxes. There was a censure of you for not going far enough on property taxes, as was just alluded to. Only 4 legislators voted against that bill. You had some pretty pointed comments to Mr. Port about your feelings on that. But in all seriousness, this is probably the biggest tax cut package ever passed in the state of North Dakota, and it wasn't enough for the state Republican Party. Can you just talk about, specifically on the property tax piece, that's shocking to me, about what do you think about that?
I think this is a trend that has happened nationally. I've watched it. I did the state party job for 3 years, but I think you are starting to see party officials being a little out of step with North Dakota voters. And I mean, we only know what we know, right? So everybody involved in this, I've had the benefit of, being in Congress for 6 years. And with the exception of Wisconsin, which is unique, it's the birthplace of the Republican Party. They have a pretty strong infrastructure. North Dakota is actually kind of one of the last states to go through this I don't know what you would call it, friction, but 3 out of 4 houses qualify, Chad. 1 out of 3 will pay no property taxes in the next biennium. And we put 3% cap on property tax budgets, which means if we allow that legacy fund to grow over time, the growth will outpace the increase from local political subs. I said when I started, I needed it to be as much as we could do that was responsible and durable, and it needed reform. We got that. And I think, we saw Measure 4, and Measure 4 really brought to light a lot of different frustrations with property taxes, but it also lost by a pretty significant margin on the ballot. And so, yeah, I guess go ahead if you want to censure me for passing what I think is the cornerstone of what I campaigned on, what I spent the first 5 minutes of my State of the State on, what the legislature delivered by the end of the session, almost to the dollar, right? Like they actually increased the primary residential credit. I'm pretty comfortable I'm on the right side of this argument.
We're first of all, just a quick note. We're all using the term censure to talk about these 2 votes that the state party took. I know that some people have pushed back and said, including the Republican National Committeeman Steve Nagel, saying that what was passed wasn't a censure. Now I'm using the dictionary definition of the word, which is that it's an official expression of disapproval, and that's literally what this was. So we're going to
in every political fight, the adversary to whatever you're doing gets a say, and the adversary in this case is me. It was a censure.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that, and the thing too is, if you're going to do something like this, have the courage of your convictions and call it what it is.
Also, another side note: they're all for accountability. There was a request to have a roll call vote, which got defeated.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that as well.
I mean, great, good for you guys.
They didn't want to be on the record, which was unfortunate. The other censure that was passed was over Senate Bill 2307, which again, there's another food fight over nomenclature there. I call it a book ban bill. Others don't, but it would have.
Well, the actual language of the resolution didn't actually apply to the bill. So not only is it censure of the bill I vetoed, but it actually didn't address the bill I vetoed. So.
Well, they censured you. That second one, speak to that one a little bit. I mean, it was the property tax, and then it was the book issue. What's your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, my reaction is the same thing I told you. I don't care. But I would say, if you want to have a fight about the platform, what's the first tenet of the Republican platform? Limited government. Whatever the opposite of limited government is what that bill was. It created a process in the Century Code that doesn't exist anywhere else in government. You would have had a complainant about a book that is guaranteed more. By the way, that person doesn't have to be a North Dakota citizen. It can be anybody that has more access to government than we have anywhere else in the Century Code. So they can go to wherever other part of the platform that they want to say that they think it didn't apply to. I'll just start with the first one. There's nothing in that bill that supported limited government. It was a massive expansion of government.
So, Kelly, you are the former state party chair, right? I mean, that you're a party guy. One of the quotes that I thought was more fascinating than the "I don't care" quote was "If the party does as much to try to defeat me as they've done to help me since 2018, I think I'll be just fine." What does this relationship look like moving forward? Because I think parties have generally gotten weaker over the last 10 years. The North Dakota GOP, I think, has certainly gotten weaker. But what is your relationship with the state GOP moving forward? Do you go to the state convention? Do you donate to the state party? I mean, all those you are the leader of the party, no matter what they say. You're the governor of the state of North Dakota.
Yep. We're gonna set up. We're gonna continue to do what we do. I think one of the things we've proven is we're pretty good at winning elections, pretty good at running campaign infrastructure. We're gonna do what we do as the governor. We're gonna support people that we think are solid conservatives that represent their district and move forward. But I will tell you, more so than all of this stuff, this is the frustration I have, because everybody. I think sometimes we forget, when I was the state party chair and Roz was the executive director, we didn't have a candidate against Heidi for a very long time, right? We didn't have a candidate. And we were engaging in the politics of trying to make sure that North Dakota Republicans were in the best position possible to beat Senator Heitkamp when she was on the ballot. And we were doing that, and we were raising money to go out there and make a case for why we should not elect Senator Heitkamp and why it was time for her to be done. By the way, this isn't personal. I consider Heidi a friend. This is politics. And that's my frustration. We don't do that anymore. And, I got endorsed at the state convention, and the next 3 executive committee meetings after that endorsement, when I was in a contested primary, were about whether or not to accept the resolutions at the state convention. Like, that's what, there was nobody on the exec committee saying, okay, we have a contested candidate. By the way, you could say that for Alex Balaz. You can say that for, I
The
can't remember.
GPI guy.
Yeah, you could say that for all of those. Those were all contested primaries. The state party, if you are doing an endorsing convention and you are endorsing a candidate and they are in a contested primary, isn't your job to help them win the primary? And that's just not where the focus of the state party is. They want to legislate from the party operation. And by the way, I never tried to do that as the state party chair. I didn't think that was our role. I got elected with, Matt Simon got elected with 24 votes. 24 votes. And I hope he does great. I hope he brings unity. I wish, as somebody who knows how hard that job is, I really do. But if they are trying to effectuate policy, they should run for the legislature. What they should do is set up an infrastructure. By the way, the other answer with the party is it's a political body by nature. And if you go to the last election cycle, and it's not ideological, the endorsing conventions didn't matter for anyone. Nobody. District 14, District in Bismarck, Clare Quarry up in Grand Forks, state party convention. If there are no political consequences, then you have no political stroke. It's a political organization by nature. And until they figure that out, their problem isn't me. Their problem is there are no consequences. There are no benefits / consequences to participating in the process right now. And I think they might not like to hear that, but sometimes you got to tell your friends tough love. And tough love that's the truth.
One of the interesting things, you made the remark about how we're seeing state parties get sort of out of step with the voters. And then you're also talking about them sort of viewing themselves as elected officials. And to me, there's always a bright line. When you're elected to a public office, your job is to represent the constituency that office represents, the legislative district, the city, a county, in your state, in your case, the state of North Dakota. And that's who you're serving. Now, you're a member of a party, and political parties, I think, serve a role and are important for some reasons. But we're seeing this trend where party officials, district chairs, state chairmen are considering themselves almost elected officials. And that just baffles me, because they're elected in very, very small meetings that are very sparsely attended. The 47 or I guess 46 district chairs that were seated on the state committee represented votes of maybe 5,000 people, if we're being generous, statewide. That's a small town. So I guess maybe speak to that a little bit. Is how do you deal with a political party that seems to think that a district chair who got maybe 12 votes at a local convention can now tell their lawmakers who got a couple of thousand votes on the legislative race how to govern?
I just view it this way. I'm a North Dakotan first, I'm the governor second, and a Republican third. And all of those things matter, right? I'm going to campaign on lowering taxes. I'm going to campaign on lowering regulation. I'm going to campaign on being pro-life. I'm going to campaign on being pro-Second Amendment. I'm going to campaign on the same things that I have campaigned on and that I've truly believed long before I was ever involved in politics. But I think, and this isn't equal across the board. And this is where, Republicans' version of local control matters too. But there are districts that do everything they can to exclude new membership and to try and control the process. And there's a concerted effort to do that. And that is not a long-term political success. Whenever I grab a group of high school juniors or seniors and I get them to come into my office, one of the first pieces of advice I give them, and I think this is really good advice for elected officials as well. Don't surround yourself with 10 people who agree with you all the time. It is a bad way to run any organization. It's a bad way to run the governor's office. It's a bad way to run a business. It's a bad way to run a district. If you are only allowing the people in the room that consider themselves your ideological soulmates, by its very nature, you are representing a faction of the Republican Party in your own district. And it's also incredibly boring to sit around with a table with 10 people who agree with you all the time. But the current framework is not. I mean, if you want to unite all Republicans, that means all Republicans. And that means Republicans who can win in a purple district in Fargo, or a swing district in Michigan, by the way, or a swing district in Nebraska. Like, I couldn't have got elected dog catcher to District 44 when I was in the state legislature. My ideology from District 36 would not have fit that district. And until you recognize the realities of that, then you're not growing the party, you're not expanding the base. And if your goal is to make 220 procedural objections on a Wednesday night to make the meeting as long as cranky as possible, you are going to lose people who have babysitters at home, who have to go to work the next day. If you're counting ballots for an endorsing commission after midnight on a weeknight, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong.
Representatives Satcham, Weiss, Carls were all in the North Dakota Monitor article, sort of basically saying the state party hates us. They hate the lawmakers. I mean, part of me has some level of sympathy for them, but part of me is like, well, you all have created this beast as well, to a certain extent, by embracing it for political sort of thing. Like, is there a path forward for elected officials in the state GOP, or do you just have to go through this process or ignore the state GOP? I mean, are you going to the next state convention?
I'm not up at the next state convention.
But are you going to attend?
There's a long time before now and the next state convention. Like, I mean, I'm not going to make assumptions that today about any of that. But I mean, I will be honest with you. I can't guarantee you I will. I mean, if they want to censure me 3 or 4 more times over the course of me being the governor, I mean, I'm pretty good at reading tea leaves. Like, there are different ways to do some of this stuff. And I mean, it's incumbent. I mean, I have a relationship with Republican voters. I have a responsibility to North Dakota voters, and as a governor, I have a responsibility to every single human who lives in this state, and every single business who does business in this state. As the Republican governor who is running under the Republican banner, I have a responsibility to Republican voters when I run for office. And if I think that the voters and the party are not in the same place, then I mean, one of the problems I think you're running into in this is one, this was always, we hate the smoke-filled back room, right? That was always the argument forever. That's not really true. What they want to do is control the smoke-filled back room.
Yeah, they want to be the ones filling those seats.
They want different participants in the room. But I think it's a really tough position to say, and it's a really tough politically position to say, is I want a very small group of people to determine who is the next governor of North Dakota. Whereas my response is, I'm going to let Republican voters determine who the next governor in North Dakota is. Like, I mean, it's politically untenable. And so and like I said, this isn't new. This isn't unique. This goes on everywhere. But a functioning party that holds their members, their districts accountable and dealing with some of those things is great. When you start getting into micro niche policy issues, you are infringing on what I think is where the party ends up. But more importantly, I don't think they spend near enough time talking about how to win elections, which is what people rely on the party for. And if they're not going to support you because you don't align with the platform, that's fine. If there was support that existed beforehand, it's a lot harder to say. It's a lot harder to look at a candidate and say, if you don't do this, we won't help you. when the response is, okay. Like, okay.
Yeah, I think that's really problematic. Do you, Chad said, essentially you're the top elected Republican in the state of North Dakota. You're the governor. And so I guess, do you feel like you have a role in maybe reforming? I mean, from the outside looking in, I'm looking at some of these rules processes. I think we're talking about where they're designed to lock people out of a room. Sometimes we're playing hide the football with the rules, where people can't even find out if they're interested in running for a different position or the legislature, they can't find the rules. Do you think there's a role? And we saw during this last legislative session where there were a couple of bills, aimed at sort of the nomination / primary process. I don't think either was particularly a good bill. One was from Representative Ben Koppelman, the other from Representative Mike Nathy. I'm not sure either would have fixed the problem. But do you think, do you have a role in trying to fix some of this and create a process that's maybe fair and brings the party back into line?
Yeah, so I would argue a little bit. Yes, I have a role. I have a role to help effectuate Republican and conservative policy. And that is from an official side, that is from a campaign side. And when I'll just tell you how I view it. There's 24 hours in a day. I have a finite amount of time. I will do the things that I think have the most impact to do those things. So if that means I don't want to reform the party for nostalgia's sake. Like, how we campaign, how we spend money, how we recruit, how you do this is very different in 2025 than it was in 1993. And if we can effectuate a change in which we get to that point and move forward, and the party is the best avenue to do those things, then yes, we should do that. If sitting through, fighting about whether or not there's a hanging Chad on Resolution 37 at the state committee meeting is where we're spending our time, I don't think that's helping effectuate Republican policy. I don't think it's helping elect Republican candidates. So there's a give and take to this relationship, and I as a candidate and as the head of the party, I have a responsibility to Republican voters across the state to utilize my time in the best way possible to elect people that will effectuate Republican and conservative policies. That doesn't necessarily mean the party isn't a part of that, but it doesn't mean they're a part of it either.
Governor, changing gears slightly, the Attorney General came out last week in response to your veto mistake that you owned, which is unique in politics these days. Obviously, Leg Counsel said the legislature has to come back. The Attorney General said, nope, the letter defined the veto. What now? Have you had conversations? Is the legislature contemplating coming back, or are you just going forward with implementing the law?
I'll be clear, before we ever did that, I was under the impression that no matter what happened, I wanted an AG's opinion because even if I agree with the AG's opinion, it doesn't discount the fact that we did overblock. On the bill, we did that. I think there's a couple things that are important here. One, this isn't a massive disagreement. This is really a procedural, an argument.
At the heart of it is a $150,000 grant.
Yeah, and I think even people who supported that recognize why I did it. It's not that I don't support it. I don't like one-time money for a full-time employee because I know what that turns into next. These are these closet creeps in growth of government, which I just am partly against. The legislature wanted the money for the housing finance. I obviously wanted it. The letter was very clear. My veto letter was very clear about what I was doing. So the reason I wanted an attorney general's opinion is because on July 1st, we will have to, that money comes in, and I am not putting executive branch officials in a position where they are doing something that they don't have legal justification to do. I do not think I need to call the legislature back. I am going to follow that attorney general's opinion, and I am going to disperse the money because I think that is how the law sets up. That is completely within my right. I think we are protected. The legislature, if they choose that they think they would rather come back for one day and fix that, then that is their prerogative. I would never tell Leader LaForte, I would never tell Leader Hogue how to utilize their days as a legislature. But I don't think I no longer have to do that. And if they're more comfortable doing that and they think that that is the right approach, that is up to them. And I think that's kind of where it sits right now.
Have you had the ball's definitely in their court? Have you had any?
And I want to be clear. I mean, I think at a staff level and like a different level, there's different. I don't know if animosity is the right word, but different, water cooler, kind of conversations. I have been up. I was very clear before we got a ruling. I talked to Senator Hogue and Leader LaForte. I'm like, if I lose this, I'm not jamming you guys. You guys will determine how you want me to do this. Like, I'm not calling you in at noon on a Friday. I mean, David Hogue was my chair when I first got to judiciary. Mike LaForce from Dickinson. Again, we're all Republicans. I'm not interested in that fight for the sake of having a fight. I think we all want the same thing. I think the Attorney General's opinion allows us to have the same thing. And I think that there's an easy way to do this, but if they're not comfortable with it, they have options. They say, and I don't want to get into it costs the taxpayers a bunch of money. I mean, they have 80 days allocated. They get to use them however they want. In the grand schemes of government, North Dakota's legislative system and their situation is the best value add you can probably find, other than maybe a volunteer fire department.
Do they have unlimited amount of time in which to, do they have until July 1st to overturn your veto?
I think that's an open question. I don't know. I think the structure is right. If they thought they had to pass a new bill, I think they need 3 days. I think if they wanted to override that veto or any of my other vetoes, I think that's a 1-day special session. But again,
do they have to do it by a certain date? I mean, you signed these things a month ago.
Yeah, I did. I haven't researched that, Chad. Okay. I just haven't. And by the way, if they called themselves back on July 4th, I'm fully capable of believing that Legislative Council is not going to give them advice that is structurally illegal, right? And so if they think they have a colorable reason they could do it, I'm not going to throw a fit if it's July 3rd or July. I would recommend they don't call themselves back on July 4th. They'll have some angry members and probably some quorum issues. If they do, I'll be at the lake shooting off fireworks. But this is a process, and it's, these process arguments are important to people, but at the same time, the outcome is going to be, we're going to have the $35 million that the legislature wanted, my office wanted, and we'll move through it. And worst case scenarios, the $150,000 would go through to a very worthy cause, by the way. I'll break news right here. I'm not doing it year over year until they get it until they get it into a budget where the FTE is accounted for.
Well, that's interesting. We're going to see how that plays out. As we let you go, I'm very glad that we didn't talk about baseball today, although now I'm bringing it up because the Yankees are playing some abysmal baseball right now.
I fell asleep last night, so I'm not doing this. I have no idea. Did the Dodgers win or the Padres win?
The Dodgers won.
Okay. And the Mets won yesterday.
Dodgers have won, I believe it's 4-5 against the Padres in the last week, which I hate the Padres.
Who has the season record against, when the Dodgers, they're done, they've played 5 games. Where are we at?
Against the Mets?
Yeah. We beat you more games than you beat us.
I don't like it's so irrelevant when the Mets are going to fall apart in October anyway.
Your entire pitching staff's on the IR. I do think it's funny that Ohtani came back and threw his rehab start the day his interpreter went to prison.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Again, I'm going to, I've told both of you separately and together, I believe you're better than these Ohtani jokes. Governor, I've told you that I believe in the judicial system, and I don't know why you don't.
What was my response? Do you believe the judicial system's exceptionally good at holding rich, powerful people accountable?
I don't like you putting me on the spot. It's my job to put you on the spot.
Again, I'm glad we're not talking about the fact that the Yankees just got swept by the not very good Red Sox, who traded Rafael Devers. The way the Red Sox treat their star players, by the way, is abysmal. But then the Yankees are in the process of getting swept by the Angels right now.
Rob, think about how exciting it's going to be when the Yankees finally score a run again, though. That's going to be so fun for you.
The Yankees are going to hit. They're in a slump. If this is their pitching staff falling apart, Rob, you should be a little more worried. The Mookie Betts trade for the Red Sox is really what's, I think, pinging the Stevers trade, because as somebody who watches a team that really likes each other and that actually, that has like chemistry, I think that is I think he was, you can read whatever you want. And I've read the same thing you guys have read, but I think we forget that part in free agency and high price talent, but 162 games is a grind. And if you have a really good team that likes each other, you are in a better chance of winning a World Series than you have a really talented team that hates to be in the same room. Go look at the Nomar trade in 04. They had to get rid of it.
I feel like that's advice the North Dakota Republican Party could heed right now, but we're gonna.
And I think it's advice that maybe the Mets should have listened to before they signed Juan Soto. But anyway, next.
All right.
Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor, and they're gonna get along great. He's coming into it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, we're gonna end the interview there before it gets any deeper in here. Thank you so much, Kelly. I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, Plain Talk listeners, have something to say? Call or text Plain Talk with your questions, comments, or headlines you want us to cover.
Just dial 701-587-3141. Leave us your message or shoot us a text with your name and location, and you could be featured on an upcoming show.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and I am in Jamestown.
Hey, Rob and Chad. My name's Tony. I live in Grand Forks.
That's 701-587-3141.
Call us, text us, vent, praise.
We want you in the conversation. Thanks for being part of the show.
Now let's get back to today's episode.
Welcome back. Just finished up with Governor Armstrong and some scintillating baseball talk. But his comments about the party, I think, are so spot on. And I think really the nut of this is that there are people who I think fundamentally misunderstand. There are people who are right now in control of the Republican Party who fundamentally misunderstand the party's role in politics. It's the people who are getting elected on the ballot. They have a responsibility to the people and all of the people, not just Republican voters or Democratic voters or Libertarian voters, or even people who don't vote at all. You have a responsibility to them, not the party. And we see this a lot. Like I know there's, that Citizens Alliance group that's talking all the time about people who sign their pledge. There's other groups that have pledges like that. I don't know. I think an elected official owes fidelity to one group of people.
Yeah.
And that's the voters. And even there, I think sometimes it's the elected official's responsibility sometimes to do their level best to do the right thing, even if it's the unpopular thing with the voters in the moment. And so I think it's just a misunderstanding of what public service is.
So I think two things. One, I think it's important that listeners understand. Governor Armstrong was the chair of the GOP. This is a guy who gets this job. He gets the role of what the state party is supposed to do. He was good at it too, unfortunately, at different times. But I would say the other point that he really made is state parties have one job. It's to win elections. It's not to legislate. It's not to do it. Their job is to win elections. This cycle, next cycle, the other cycle. He said that's what candidates count on them to help do. I did not get the impression that Governor Armstrong sees any value in the state party. And I think that his point about the meetings leading up to his primary, where all they talked about was resolutions and that kind of stuff, when they had candidates on the ballot in contested races. If I was a GOP elected official, I don't think I'd care about the party right now either, because I need help winning elections. I don't need help legislating.
Some of his comments about like Wednesday night meetings that run into the wee hours of Thursday morning because people have 200 point of order objections and these fights. And you know what it made me think of? You and I were together at the Democratic convention a couple cycles ago in Minot. And I remember sitting in that room listening to a protracted debate about whether or not Democrats were going to endorse a state-owned bakery in their party platform, and not being not trying to diminish. I don't think that's a good idea. But my personal feelings aside, even for the people who are passionate about it, I'm not trying to diminish the fact that you're passionate about that issue. But you need to understand what the party's role is. Nobody cares
Nobody cares.
Even the Republican Party, who has super majorities in the legislature in every statewide office, just because you put something like that on the platform doesn't mean that it's going to go anywhere. And then especially, and I see a lot of that where they're sitting around having these discussions about rules and everything else. Meanwhile, they're alienating people who aren't in that room. And
I also thought, his point about they claim to be against the smoke-filled rooms, but they're not. They're against not being the people filling the seats in the smoke-filled rooms. I mean, they're not against that concept.
Right. When you play hide the football with the rules, or you're trying to game the rules to keep certain people out of the room, what you are promoting is a smoke-filled room.
Right.
That's what you are promoting. And that, I mean, it's they're in charge right now. They elected one of their own as the party chair. They have a majority on the state committee, and this is what they're going to do.
And I also don't. So they censured Kelly for these two things. They didn't censure the legislators for passing these same things, right? I suppose the book ban they didn't vote for.
Yeah.
They censured Jason Doctor, which, by the way, how untimely is that? How many times has the state party met since Jason Doctor was in trouble? I mean, they wait that much longer. But to your column, no Nico Rios, no Van Winkle for just not showing up to work. No, did they censure Luke Simons back in the day? I mean, you can go down anything on the people associated with the Holmberg thing. I mean, there's so many different things that you could censure people for.
And the thing is, I don't think the party needs to censure people.
That I agree with that.
It's not like I'm saying, we need to be doing so many more censures. That's not the argument that I'm making. What I'm making, if you're going to go down this road and you're going to censure the governor because you disagree with him on policy, you disagree with him on library policy, you disagree with him on property tax policy, if that's the bar, then you're going to have to censure a lot more people, because you should definitely censure people like Nico Rios, who used homophobic slurs against and racial bigoted comments against two law enforcement officers, and also tried to use his status as a legislator to get out of a DUI. He doesn't get a censure from the state party. What are we? You don't like Kelly Armstrong's ideas for property taxes. All right, fine. But you censure him, but not Nico Rios, or not Lori Van Winkle, Representative Lori Van Winkle, who took a vacation in the middle of the legislative session, collected all her legislative pay for it, and also earlier in that session made a remark about how women who are struggling with infertility were cursed by God. How do you not censure? I mean, if you're going to censure people, and the thing is, I don't think any of those. I don't think the party should go down that road. That's up to the voters to decide how they feel about those things.
And I would also add that it's not just one faction. They could have censured Jeremy Olson, and it made more sense than censuring Kelly Armstrong on property taxes. Again, a bill that you pointed out, only 5 legislators voted against. So 136, 4? So
4 in the whole legislature.
137 legislators voted for it then, assuming that everybody's there. You're going to censure the governor?
Now, the censure for the governor did express disappointment in the legislature as well, for what that's worth. But again, you're censuring the Republican, just about every Republican in the legislature, but 4, and your governor, who just won almost 70% of the vote on the statewide ballot. And you're the voice. And that's the thing that bugs me, is they walk around their "We the People" shirts. We the people are going to do this. I thought the most interesting thing is the governor said Matt Simon, who's the new chair of the North Dakota Republican Party. Matt Simon was elected with 24 votes.
Yep. Well, and I would also just say, going back to this property tax thing, he delivered a huge amount of tax relief. That's what Republicans should be running around the state bragging about that. That's what the traditional Republicans would be bragging about today. But they're mad at him?
One of the other stories, was Representative Lauser. He's clearly not 100% on board with that property tax plan. He had announced the ballot measure campaign. He's now backed off that after seeing some polling. I don't have a problem with Representative Lauser. It's not like I'm saying everybody has to agree with the governor. That's not it. I don't begrudge.
Lauser's not censuring him, the governor, for disagreeing with him.
That's just democracy.
Right.
That's just Representative Lauser says, I think I have a better idea. He took a run at it. He's not going to pursue it. That's his choice. But I respect him for having the debate. And I think that Representative Louser adds a lot to these debates. We interviewed him several times during the legislative session about property taxes. He's always an interesting discussion because he's very thoughtful and he's very thorough and he's very knowledgeable. And there's nothing wrong with him disagreeing with the governor on property tax reform.
And I think Louser will bring, assuming he's coming back, will bring his ideas on how to tweak property taxes 2 years from now. We're going to have this conversation again.
We'll see what happens. And maybe 2 years from now, as we see what happens, as this reform gets rolled out, maybe there's some of those ideas that start to look good.
And nobody who supported the Armstrong plan said this is a perfect plan. Everyone said, hey, we're probably going to have to come back in 2 years and look at the cap and some of these things and see if it needs to be done differently.
And that sort of humility is how good policy gets made. That, right. Listen, we're doing the best we can with the best information we have available now, and we understand everything in a democracy is a work in progress.
And I'm glad Louser's not moving forward with the measure. I think that's a smart move. I'm glad he did polling and made that decision. I think it would have had a tough time passing, and it probably would have eliminated the ability for him next session to have a conversation about the tweaks he'd like to see on this bill.
I think it was a wise choice on his part. The other thing we wanted to talk about, we had the No Kings protest. Now, on a previous show, I had said, because I kind of compared, and then I ultimately wrote a column that made lots of people on the right and left mad, sort of comparing the No King protests to the Tea Party protests that I helped organize, 15 years ago or so. And I do see a lot of similarities. I mean, even down to the content of the signs. I think it's very fascinating. Even though the two movements are probably divergent if we really want to get down to brass tacks, but even within No Kings, you're going to find a lot of different people. Now, what I had said previously is I didn't feel like they had reached the critical mass that the 2009 Tea Party protests did. I am less certain about that now after having seen this last weekend of protests. There were a lot of people in a lot of communities across the state, thousands in some of the communities, hundreds in some places where Minot, Dickinson, very conservative places that I was not expecting the turnout to be that strong. It was very, very strong. And also the coalition that they're building are not just, sort of dyed in the wool ideological progressives. It's a broader coalition that I'm seeing of people who are dissatisfied. Now, the problem with the broader coalition, it gets, as we learned in the Tea Party movement, it gets hard to hang together long term, but they don't need to hang together long term. What they need is to make a statement on the ballot, and they're close to doing it.
Yeah, so I was there on Saturday in Bismarck waving my American flag, and I was amazed by two things. One, the amount of people that I didn't know there, and two, some of the people who were there that I did know. I saw nuns there. I saw people who I know as military veterans and their families who I would have never known they were even progressive. They might not be progressive, right? I saw siblings and children of Republican lawmakers. I saw people who were there standing up for their kids. I mean, the signs were about rights related to Native Americans, about LGBTQ, all these different things. It wasn't just we hate Trump, which is, I don't like that. I also don't like the over the top impeachment sort of talk, because I think we water down impeachment when everybody's impeaching each other. But it was inspiring. The other thing that was inspiring to me wasn't just the 2,000 or 2,500 people standing on the street, the amount of people driving by and beeping and waving and supporting it as well. At the same time, the state Republicans, you could see them up in their window sort of looking out at the protesters as well.
For people who don't know, the Republican Party's headquarters, they call it the Reagan Center, is right across the street from the Capitol. So as the protesters were gathered at the Capitol, the Republicans were holding this state meeting that we've been talking about so much at the same time. And I heard from some people in that room too that there was a lot of gawking on.
I will tell you, Rob, my favorite text that I received all that day is I texted you from the scene, and that the GOP event was going on across the street. And it was while they were voting for the chair. And your text to me was, let me know when you see white smoke above the Reagan Center as they were trying to elect a chairman. That did make me laugh out loud.
That was, I am pretty funny sometimes.
Well, but the other thing I would say is there were just a handful of people who drove by. I mean, there was one guy who drove by using the N-word, flipping people off, that kind of stuff. But by and large, it was good.
Somebody was throwing some garbage or some clods of dirt down there.
Yeah.
There were a couple incidents like that. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it because
it was super limited. And I would also say there's some on the right who like took a couple things sort of out of context and said, oh, look at the craziness going on. By and large, this thing was 99% peaceful and thoughtful, other than Charles Tuttle standing across the street.
Well, they have, and the thing is, Democrats did that to us during the Tea Party, where they would zero in on the couple of signs that were intemperate or said some offensive things, and then try to paint the whole. That happens with every protest movement. Yep. By and large, I think Republicans need to be cognizant of this. And they need to understand how Americans are feeling about some of this stuff right now. And maybe it's not. My advice right now for the No Kings people would be to just really stay focused on the big picture things. Don't get bogged down in details. Don't get bogged down in policy platforms or anything like that. Keep it very focused on just things are not right. Right. And we need to vote differently or act differently. That needs to be the message. And I maybe that's unappealing to some people because it's too simplistic or it's too broad. But I mean, if you want this coalition to hang together and make a difference, that's what you got to do.
Yeah, and I don't believe this sort of activism and whatever is going to cause North Dakota to elect a Democrat statewide. But what it could do is legislative races, where there's more
I don't even think it can swing a majority, but if all of a sudden you see Democrats pick up 6, 7, 8 seats in the House.
That's exactly right. And I think that's what Democrats should be hoping for, is that should be the goal.
Temper your expectations. But right now, going from 5 to 11 senators in the Senate is a swing. Even though that's still nowhere approaching a majority.
It changes the whole session. Changes the whole
major swing.
I do want to add one other thing that I'd heard about the Fargo No Kings rally, that there was a speaker who was added at the end that was not on the agenda, who said some really like anti-police stuff that made people feel.
Well, I haven't really seen the specific comments.
I haven't either, but I texted somebody who's there after I saw some of the letters to the editor, and they said, yeah, it wasn't great. It was the person I talked to said, I don't know who this person even was. They were not on the agenda as speakers. The folks let this person talk. And again, you have one person. And the interesting thing, the letters to the editor have been people who were there protesting who said, I didn't like that. I didn't like when we started going after.
Funny thing is, the people I heard from were people who were at the protest.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of right-wing critics out there about it. So I don't even know what was said.
Yeah.
I do think that that's something, the organizers of this, it can't be about your personal set of gripes with the government. You need to keep that separate. Right now, you've got to, whatever is like the few very broad things that are motivating this, stick to that.
Yep. And most of it's emotion, right? I mean, we talked about the last presidential election. Was it going to be an election on emotion? I don't know that it ended up being that, but it's awesome. A vibe, right? It's a vibe.
Right. And once that vibe shows up at the polls and it changes something, even if it's just enlarging the Democratic minority in state government or something like that, then you can start having some talks about specifics. But right now, I think you got to ride this wave of vibes, I guess, for lack of a better word.
And I would suggest that, depending on what seats Dems pick up, if you're a traditional Republican, probably wouldn't hurt you to have a few more Democrats up there, because they are supporting. I mean, they supported Kelly's property tax bill. They supported other things. I
will tell you, someone who is situated to ride this wave pretty well is Kelly Armstrong. The amount of respect that he got. I mean, that comment he made to me, that quote, and it was kind of remarkable. Like when I knew when the censure came, when they approved when they approved them, I called him. He's like, yeah, I got a quote for you. I don't care. That quote, I mean, the amount of respect that I think he earned, where he's just kind of repudiate this fringe that has taken over his party, the willingness to stand up to his own party and not sort of cower and be afraid of them, earned him a lot of respect from independent and even left of center voters. Now, maybe he'll cringe at that a little bit and not like that. But I mean, and the thing is, I don't think it's calculation either. Like, I don't think he's sitting back doing the math thinking, oh, if I do this, I think that was genuine.
Armstrong does not get punched in the face and then just sit there and take it.
Right.
He didn't go out seeking to have comments in the paper attacking the state party this weekend. They made the decision to go after him in a really, really dumb way. And again, he's the leader of the party. He's the best fundraiser in the party. He's probably the most popular Republican in the state right now. And you're going to go after him? I mean, it's just stupid politics.
He got more votes than Donald Trump did on the statewide ballot. While running, by the way, in a three-way race with a challenge from a far-right candidate who got, 20,000 or so votes, 25,000 votes, something like that.
Who I believe the new chairman supported, right?
Right, yeah, the new chairman supported him. So that's it's remarkable to me. And I don't want to make it sound like I think Kelly's posturing himself, because I think this is genuine. This is very genuine things that he's saying, his feelings about the party. It just also happens to make him the sort of leader who I think can lead through a time like this and come out of it looking pretty good.
Yeah, and I just think Kelly's also the kind of guy who doesn't have time for this crap, right? He doesn't, like, again, going back to him saying, I don't want to sit through a meeting where we're talking about if we're going to accept the resolutions or not. I want to talk about how to win elections. I don't want to sit through this. I want to talk about how we're going to fix property taxes. It's real conversations.
Yeah, it really is. And it's really interesting. And again, I think he's right. I think the reason why the party is really focused, like hyper focused on resolutions, those are the tools that they have. Like if you're a district chair or the state chair and you view your role as to sort of control elected Republicans, then the tools you have are things like censures and resolutions and stuff. And that's, I think, why they're so obsessed with them. Those are the tools they have to try to control this, and rules.
Another thing I was thinking about, I want your take on this. It seems like North Dakota Republicans are much more focused on the governor and their anger towards the governor. Democrats, on the other hand, they're only focused on Washington. That's the only thing they're focused on. And it seems like that's been the case for decades, that North Dakota Republicans do a better job at focusing on North Dakota politics and what's happening at home, whereas Democrats are always looking to Washington. And I don't think it just started with Trump. I think it's started way before that.
Yeah. I honestly, I think that's one of the problems. I mean, the thing is,
I agree.
That's where their focus is, but that's also their kryptonite. Those national politics, people like Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, these are not popular people in North Dakota. And a lot of the positions that they espouse are not popular here. And I think it would behoove progressives in North Dakota and Democrats in North Dakota to really focus on the parts of being a Democrat or the Democratic platform or Democratic ideas that are going to appeal to North Dakotans. You're going to lose on the other ones. You just are.
Yeah.
But you need to focus on the ones that you can win on. And right now they are. They are really hyper-focused on Donald Trump. And that's tough in a state where, again, well over 60% of the people voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That's a tough road to hoe. As somebody who is one of the loudest critics of Donald Trump in the state, I could tell you, you're spitting in the wind.
Yeah. So one other thing, I want to compliment Kevin.
Being that I don't have to win elections.
Yeah, you don't have to win elections, exactly. I want to compliment Kevin Kramer. Yesterday, I was reported in Politico that he went after Senator Mike Lee, pretty hard about Senator.
Not at all. The assassinations in Minnesota.
Yeah. So terrible assassinations in Minnesota, and Senator Mike Lee from Utah posted some terrible stuff on Twitter, blaming it on Tim Walz and other things like that at a time where everybody, Republican, Democrat, legislative, executive, was coming together. And yesterday, Kevin Cramer basically told Mike Lee that it was inappropriate. He should take him down. And finally, he took him down, the stuff that he said. So good for Cramer for being a human being in this situation.
And I will tell you, that is one of the scariest facets of politics in this moment for me is whether it's some rando on Facebook up to the president of the United States and on the right, certainly mega right, but also some on the left as well, is this unwillingness to just sort of like embrace reality. Right. The reality is that the shooter in Minnesota, first of all, his politics don't matter to me one way or the other. He's a murderer, whatever his politics are. But it sure looks like he was a Trump supporter and everything. Now, I don't say that to say that means that Trump's wrong or that all Trump supporters are evil or anything like that. But the fact of the matter is, you can't say he was a leftist. He wasn't.
No.
If you're going to say that, you're wrong. You're factually wrong.
And I also think we need to start having some real conversation about safety. I mean, you remember last session when the governor's residence needed some safety upgrades. And I know there's people who are like, why are we spending money on this stuff and whatever? We need to keep our people safe. And that should be, in this day and age, I don't want to be that guy who's like, oh gosh, it's back in my day, things were safe, but we're in a dangerous time right now.
The obviously the most tragic part of what happened in Minnesota, the people lost their lives and the people who were hurt. And that's terrible. Down the list from those things, what really hurt me as a North Dakotan was, and I don't begrudge them doing it, but taking lawmakers, some of the personal information off the legislative website. I don't really think we needed, home addresses for legislators. You can engage with your legislator without knowing their home address. But North Dakota, it's such an open place. It's such an open process. I mean, they have their cell phone numbers. I've called the House Majority Leader when he was on Chet Pollard, back when he was a Majority Leader. I called him and he's out on his combine in the middle of a field on his cell phone. He's like, I'll call you back when I get to the end of the row or whatever. Right? It was just such an endearing thing. And the thing is he wasn't answering because it was a reporter calling. Anybody, his cell phone number, the House Majority Leader, was listed on the website. Anybody could have called him.
So, and I was sort of struck by looking at those scenes of where the shootings, that could have been a street in Fargo, that could have been a street in Bismarck, it could have been, that could just as well happen here.
It's going to cost us something in terms of openness, and that just hurts. I think it hurts not just as a reporter, but as a citizen. I think that just hurts a lot. So, hey, coming up on Friday, we're going to have State Treasurer, almost called him Secretary of State Treasurer Thomas Beadle on about baby bonds, which Chad and I disagree with on I think Chad's more skeptical than I am. But I think it's a really interesting idea that came up. Obviously, it's coming up in the context of the Trump accounts and the federal budget, which at the federal level, I think I'm against it because they don't have the money, first of all. Yeah. And second of all, I think they're going to put too many restrictions on it. I think it's something North Dakota could do. And you know how in love I am with North Dakota's Latin motto, we sow for the good of another age. I'm not going to try to pronounce that in Latin. But I'm really in love with that. Or that old saying about a society thrives when people can bask in the shade of trees planted by their fathers. I really believe in that. And I feel like this is something that serves. Anyway, interesting.
I would just add just a little socialism now pays big dividends in the future.
I disagree that it's socialism, but we'll have that discussion with Treasurer Beadle. Also had Jody Smith, Executive Director of the North Dakota Retirement and Investment Office, and Cody First, Director of 50 South Capital on. They're going to talk about our in-state investment program, which has hit some bumps and gotten some criticism, but I feel like they're starting to cook with gas. I feel like we're starting to get things straightened out a little bit.
Yeah, and it's such a good idea. I mean, if we have this capital, why don't we invest it in ourselves?
Even understanding we're going to give up some points of return.
Yep.
But the return we get from in-state investment isn't just going to be calculated on what we're paid back on our investments. It's also calculated in opportunities for North Dakotans, employment for North Dakotans, having nice restaurants and other nice businesses and amenities for North Dakotans, all sorts of things.
All for it. Yep.
That's a good discussion also coming up. Thanks as always for listening, and we'll talk again. That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening.
I don't like you putting me on the spot. It's my job to put you on the spot.